Welcome back, Exorcist fans. We are continuing with part 2 of my review and analysis of Chapter 9 of last week's Exorcist episode entitled 162. As before, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen the episode for whatever particulars, please do take the time to catch up before you take a gander at this review if you so choose. But if you are ready to go forward, then let's begin, because there are some things I want to pick up on that we left off on from part 1. Now, one of the things we were discussing in the last part was the fact that Bishop Egan has in fact offered Tomas the leadership of St. Bridget's. And a question that I had posed in that scene was, in my review of that scene was, is this offering of St. Bridget's, this promotion, is this part of the design of the demons against Tomas? And what is this design of the demons against Tomas in the first place? The other question I wanted to pose is there a possibility that Bishop Egan is either wittingly or unwittingly part of that design? We have yet to know what that is, either what the design against Tomas is, or if Bishop Egan is a part of it somehow with or without his knowledge, but we, I think, are going to soon see somewhere down the line as the show progresses. Now, of course, in the next scene, the subsequent scene, we do see that Father Marcus has once again surreptitiously, you want to put it in those terms, found his way into Tomas's office, and he has managed to do a little spying around and trying to find out what's going on. But in the process, Tomas tells him that he's been offered the leadership of St. Bridget's, and Marcus tells him to watch his back. Particularly the higher you rise, the more people will try to conspire your downfall. And of course, we know that Marcus is correct in that his long and vast experience in what's going on in these kinds of conspiracies and other things, natural and supernatural, informs his opinion very well, and he's trying to inform their still rather green and naive Tomas that things are not all as they appear to be. So he is very wise to counsel Tomas in this regard to watch himself. Now, we still have a very deeply morose and withdrawn Casey, still wondering about what has happened to her, still trying to process everything that happened to her through the possession and through the subsequent events that occurred because of it. And we see that Catherine is trying to console her sister in this regard. But one of the things that chiefly jumps out in this scene is this. Casey is, of course, still attempting to process the fact that it was her body, her hands, that were used to kill these two paramedics who picked her up from her house after the police were called unwittingly by her sister in an attempt. What she thought at the time was a good thing to do was to help her sister, when she didn't really realize what was going on and the full depth and scope of what was happening to Casey. So Casey, of course, as you may remember, murdered those two paramedics. Well, it wasn't really her, but it was the demon inside of her using her body as a conduit to do this. And, of course, Casey reveals in this scene that she was basically made to watch this entire occurrence, and that the demon thought it would be funny, effectively, to essentially to make her watch him murder these two people using her body as the means. And so she is still very distraught about this fact, and that's an understandable reaction. Her sister is trying to console her in this regard, but it still would be a long process of recovery until Casey is able to live with herself again. But I think that this is a parallel, once again, between the series and the original movie, where Reagan actually herself, we don't actually see it, but Reagan herself more than likely murdered someone, while the demon, the same demon in fact, was in possession of her body all those years ago, back in 1973. Now, I wanted to put this scene in here. I, in fact, had to put this scene in here, the scene between Bernadette and Angela, because I thought that this was, perhaps to me, without a doubt, if not the most powerful scene in this entire episode, then it was certainly one of them. And I think that this is an example not just of great acting on both the part of Gina Davis and the actress who played Mother Bernadette, but I think it is an example, to me, of something far, far greater in its symbolism, and that is This is an example to me of the faith and the resolve and the poise that Mother Bernadette displayed, even in the face of this great evil, even in the face of the enemy of her soul, who she knew was coming, the enemy of her God, who she knew was coming, more than likely, if not to just basically confront her about what was going on and perhaps hurt her, but more than likely, I think Mother Bernadette knew, once she realized that the demon was present in the priory in the form of Angela Rance, I think Mother Bernadette knew that she was possibly, more than likely, facing her death. But I want you to take a look at this seriously. She knows the demon is present in Angela. She tells Angela, I felt you the moment you walked through these doors. But did she try to run away? Did she try to hide herself from the demon? Did she plead for mercy from the demon? Did she even ask God for deliverance in prayer? We do see that she is, in fact, praying before Angela walks in the door. We don't know what she was praying for, but I am wondering if she was even praying for deliverance. Was she, in fact, praying for deliverance, or was she praying that God's will be done no matter what happens? Was it a prayer of protection, or was it for a prayer of acceptance? I guess, in other words, you might might question. Bernadette knows that who the demon is, but she displays an unswerving resolve in this particular scene to face the demon without fear and without any form of desire to plead for her own physical, corporeal life. In this scene, she says to the demon. She speaks plainly and straight up to Angela Pazuzu when she says, we should have killed you when we had the chance, and you're nothing but a child throwing a tantrum. This to me is a magnificent scene because of what it displays about Mother Bernadette's faith and her desire to see God's will be done no matter what the cost, even the cost of her own life. And I think that this was a magnificent display of faith and presence by Mother Bernadette. I think it also talks about the what I said before in the first part of my review about the supernatural or the spiritual antennae that both Mother Bernadette has in this scene and what she's displayed before in other episodes, and the kind of spiritual antennae that Marcus also has, something that you don't see yet present in Tomas by way of example and contrast, where these two, Bernadette and Marcus, can sense the presence of these evil creatures even before they even get close to them. They can sense the presence of these demons, these fallen angels, in other people around them. And Bernadette once again displays that here, and I have to give a lot of props to Mother Bernadette for the way she conducted herself, even unto her death. In this scene, this was what made this such a powerful scene to me in this entire episode. If not the most powerful, then certainly it ranked up there near the very top. And of course, as the other nuns come in and they have yet to even see that Mother Bernadette is dead, we see that Angela, the Pazuzu, in its resolve to murder these loyal servants of God, is unwavering and unrelenting and without mercy in, of course, slaughtering these creatures, these nuns, who stood in its way of its purposes and tried to exorcise it from Casey. But now the question becomes, we only see these three nuns here and Mother Bernadette. That's four. But think about this. Question for you here. Where were the other nuns who were part of this priory? There were more than just four nuns who were part of this group. Where are the others? I think if I don't remember what episode it was it the second episode, or the fifth episode, I think it was. We know that there are more than four nuns who are part of this priory. The question is, did Angela Pazuzu murder them all, or was it just these four? We don't know the answer to that yet. We can only make assumptions at this point. Now, this is the scene, of course, where Casey has entered the room where this fierce exorcism has taken place. And she's remembering and reliving, perhaps in some ways, some of the things that have happened to her. And, of course, Angela walks in the room after seeing her in there. And this is where we get another example of the creepiness that is going on with Angela that is probably starting to clue in Casey even more, that something is just totally not right with Angela at this point. But one of the things that goes on is that Casey asks Angela about what she remembers about her own possession when she was a girl, what it felt like for you. I think Casey asks Angela. And Angela starts using words to the degree of how intimate it was, of how deep it was, and that at some level, Casey asked for the demon to continue to be part of her very existence, to be united in effect, in essence, with her own soul, and that she, felt shame after a time for actually enjoying this level of connection and intimacy, if you want to call it that. In some ways, I think you can actually compare this to a form of rape, okay? Spiritual rape, if you want to put it in those terms. And I think what you see here, actually, is that in some ways, all of these phrases can be used as allusions, not illusions, illusion, but allusions, allusion. All of these phrases that Angela uses, intimate, deep, you ask for it, shame for enjoying it. All of these things can be used as allusions to some form of sexual union and orgasmic bliss, okay? But at a perverted, very seriously perverted way, and in a very seriously and deeply perverted level. And I think that the demon perverts this entire idea, but it's the kind of, I guess you can say, as for humans, it's kind of a way we can kind of compare what happened in this forced, compelled union between Casey's soul, Casey's spirit, and this demon. It's a kind of a way that we can compare it to, something that we can relate to and understand. And I think in the Grief Bearers, the previous episode that came on, you actually see another example of this, where the demon is, when he is inside of Pazuzu, when he is inside of Angela's mind, he actually says to her, when she's looking at herself as the younger Reagan in the basement, he says, "This is my favorite memory of you right here," and you see Reagan drooling right there. I think if you go back and watch that scene carefully and examine it, you see that the demon is again right there, saying that there again, that he was doing something of a sexual nature to Reagan. He was violating her in some kind of sexual manner. And I think that once again, with Casey, the demon is using this through Angela as a means to further manipulate and to confuse the distraught and very vulnerable Casey at this point. Instead of doing what Angela promised to do in one of the previous episodes, I don't remember if it was Star of the Morning or if it was some other episode before that, when Angela was talking to her mother, and when she said, when this is over, Casey is going to feel so dirty and unclean, which I think is in part another sexual reference. I'm going to tell her, she said, that she is good and wholesome and clean, she said to her mother. Angela said to her mother. And I think once again, instead of doing that, what the demon is doing, Pazuzu is doing here, is actually doing the exact opposite and making it seem as if it's Casey's fault that this occurred, and that it is in fact Casey's fault for even enjoying it in some way. So I think in some ways you can in fact compare this to a kind of spiritual rape. I mean, in this scene where you should see Angela trying to console and comfort Casey, she is actually acting all giddy and nonchalant, as if nothing serious has occurred at all. She even compliments Catherine on her blouse with this little curt smile, and then walks out of the room. This is totally the opposite of the way any parent should be behaving after a traumatic experience like this, and yet you see that this is what's going on. So there obviously definitely is something happening that the family is not yet aware of, except for Casey. Now, I did not want to fail to put in this gala scene at the church, because I happen to wonder for myself whether or not this speech by Maria Walters did not sound as half-hearted to you as it sounded to me. Because personally and quite honestly, I don't know if she was doing anything more than going through the motions. It certainly was a very fine speech. She's a very elegant woman by all appearances' sake. But after we learn what we learn in the previous scene, where Angela Pazuzu in the form of Angela says that you will never be one of us. In other words, you will never be chosen to host one of the fallen angels, one of the firstborn. I'm wondering now if Maria Walters is going through a phase where she is beginning to reconsider her place in this demonic scheme, and if she's just now going through the motions. You tell me what you think of this. Will she turn against the demons and their plans, perhaps in the process sacrificing her own life, or will she continue going down the dark path through no other end, because this is what she thinks her fate is, and there's no way out for her except to face the condemnation with the dark powers? Now, I couldn't fail also to include this scene, because here's another example of the creepiness that we see occurring, being manifested by Angela. Here she is touching herself in the bedroom with Henry, and she begins to at some point ask him, "When was the last time you touched me?" He says it's been a long time. She says it's been a while, and she says it's been a long while. Obviously, there begins some examples of foreplay and stuff like that going on, but then it starts to get seriously weird after a point. I mean, I know some people may like, rough foreplay in their, sexual conjugations and stuff of this nature, but this starts to get just outrageously stupid after a point, and you start to see that Angela is actually starting to choke Henry. I mean, I thought, quite frankly, after looking at this scene, that the demon was going to kill Henry. I really did not know what to think about this. This is beyond kinky foreplay here. This is something serious going on here, and you can see that by the look on Angela's face. I mean, even with all the grunting noises and things like that she's making, you see her like kind of grinding her teeth together and having this really serious and demented look on her face. It's like, I really want to kill you, but I'm not going to do it just yet. And I don't know why, what was going on here with the demon, but this was really something funky right here, and you could not fail to pick up on this at all. And of course, here's the next scene of weirdness happening here, where Casey comes in and sees Angela literally fondling Catherine. I mean, if you weren't just looking at this as a one woman fondling her own daughter, if you didn't know what this was, you would really think that this was seriously just perverted. But it is perverted, but it's perverted in a different way, because we know that this is the demon looking at Catherine as some kind of object of not necessarily physical desire, but perhaps examining and studying her body, perhaps for, I don't know. I was thinking in this part that the demon might have been trying to, study and quote unquote savor, as Angela used the phrase, its potential next host. That's what I was seriously thinking here, was the demon examining Catherine the way it did Casey as well. If you remember one of the earlier episodes, the demon actually did the same thing to Casey, using her own body as the vehicle to do so, with her not even knowing what she was doing. When she was sitting in the kitchen in the house, talking to herself, and her mom comes into the kitchen and hears her talking in the demonic voice, and she actually starts recording her touching herself all over the place, her legs, her arms, her chest, her stomach, and all this. And this is exactly, of course, what the demon is doing here with Catherine. And it's just nasty. But you see what is happening here, and I think the demon was actually looking at, well, she's got a nice body here. I think I might be interested in having this for my vessel next time. And maybe I get rid of Angela, she gets too old, she dies, maybe I'll find a way to go and get inside Catherine right here. What do you think? I mean, I don't know, but I think that's what was going on here. It was more than just, a nice little body to, fondle around with. Of course, Casey, having seen all of this and then interrupting this process, finally comes in and tells her mom that, it's time for you to leave so that I can get some sleep, because the couch is too lumpy. But this is also another area where Casey is just clued in that this is not my mom. I think this was probably the last straw where she realized, this is not my mother. Whatever I've been feeling before, I couldn't quite clue in on it. Now I can. This is not my mom. We got to get the heck out of here. Now, I have a new name for Father Marcus at this point. I'm going to start calling Marcus the Punishment of God, or for short, the Punisher, because this man is willing to throw down with the forces of darkness whenever he finds them and confronts them. And we know that he is someone to be contended with and to possibly even be feared, because the demons actually said that in, I think it was episode 2, Lupus in Fabula. The great Marcus, one of the demons, called him the one we feared. I think he actually said the only one we feared. Let's get into that a little bit more at a later point. But Marcus is now called the Punisher to me, because this guy knows how to handle his business, and he's willing not just to throw down spiritually, but he's willing to throw down physically with the Devil's League. He is willing to take care of things at a very basic level, as you can see.